good friend of mine, good friend of the show, the wonderfully married family man, also director of The Last Dance, and as we all know, director of the Down the Valley, the King's Doc for ESPN. He joins us right now, nice enough to come on, just from me texting him, because today there's a cool thread I saw on Twitter. It's from a guy named Nathan Baugh, talking about how The Last Dance is now the most watched documentary in Disney history, averaged 5.6 million viewers per episode, generated tens of millions in revenue. I hope most of that went to Jason. But Michael Jordan made $4 million. They say only. I know that's a lot for us, but only $4 million. And they broke down some of the stuff. I wanted to run some of these things by Jason to see what was right, what if there was anything wrong, and some of these are just opinion things as well. And any chance I get to check in with Jason is always fun. Jason, it's Dave. It's Jason Ross. Good morning, pal, from the East Coast. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Great. You know that we were talking earlier. I spent the day with Sugar Ray Leonard yesterday. He said, you know what? Every once in a while, especially when you haven't talked to one of your buddies in a long time, just simply ask them, "Are you happy?" Just ask them that question. So I will start my day doing that. Jason, are you happy?
Very happy. Doing some research on a couple of upcoming projects and sitting here with my napping dog, looking out over the Hudson River. It's a beautiful day in New York. So yes, 10 out of 10. How about you?
I'm good, Jason.
Yeah, I'm 10 out of 10 as well.
Yeah, I think we're all good. It's good to be alive. Jay Mars, you happy?
Happy belated birthday, by the way, Dave.
Thank you, pal. I appreciate that. Not fun getting older, but hey, also it's fun getting older. You know what I'm saying? It's good to be here. Jason, some of these facts I just saw and I went, you know what? I'd like to BS with Jason about these because I don't know what your take would be on these, which is why we're talking. This is a Twitter thread on a lot of this stuff and your great work and your team on The Last Dance. It says LeBron James starts out. LeBron came back from a down 3-1 to win the NBA Finals, staking his claim as the best basketball player of all time, according to some. But during the championship parade, Michael Jordan agreed to release the footage to The Last Dance, obviously making a connection there that maybe MJ wanted to remind a newer generation, Michael Jordan did, of his excellence. Do you is that something that sounds familiar? Do you buy that at all?
I don't buy it. The timing I buy, but this project was in development way before the playoffs even started that season. So I think that the timing may have been such that Mike Tolan, who runs the production company that ran the show, had a meeting with LeBron, with Michael the same day as LeBron's parade. But that meeting was set. I mean, they were meeting about this show in February at the All-Star break of that year. I forget where the All-Star game was that year. New Orleans, maybe?
Yeah.
Wherever it was. They were meeting about it then. So this was way before the playoff season started that season. So no, I've heard that before. It's very convenient, but I really doubt it.
Another thing they say is production was rushed back, moved up from June to April. If my memory serves me correctly, that is correct, because I remember the only thing tougher than putting together, a 10-hour documentary, the most important documentary in sports history, which is going to be shown on ABC in an unprecedented partnership between Netflix and Disney, who are now direct competitors. The only thing that would put more pressure on your lap would be, I don't know, moving it up months. And I do remember something like that did happen.
That is true.
Okay.
But it was actually a blessing for those of us who had been in the trenches. We had a finish line.
Right. That took some of the pressure off. Oh, Jason, did I lose you?
I'm hearing somebody else.
Oh, that's the room in the people in the other room are waving at me, and by proxy, you saying we apologize. They had a feed come in there. My question was, sorry for that, Jason.
No, I heard the question. Yeah. I was saying that is true. We were supposed to air the night after Game 1 of the finals in 2020, and it was going to be like every other night when they weren't playing the finals. They were going to show 2 more episodes of The Last Dance.
Gotcha.
So it is true that they moved it up by 2 months, but it actually was a blessing because we had been, this thing was supposed to air in 2019. It was supposed to air in 2018 to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the 98 finals. And then it got pushed back to 2019. And then we had so many cooks in the kitchen that the notes process just went on for months and months and months. And finally we had a finish line, and we couldn't note these things to death, and we couldn't argue these things to death, and people couldn't weigh in. Put it this way: it took us 18 months to get episode 1 across the finish line, and it took us 8 days to get episode 10 across the finish line.
Yeah, and I remember that, Jason, when we had you on each week, you were talking about how you were still maybe editing episode 7 while we're talking about episode 2 or 3. If you think, I know there was a joy in a sense where you had the finish line. If you didn't have the finish line, how different do you think the product would be?
I don't think the quality would have suffered, but my hair would have been a few shades towards gray or white, just because the most arduous part of the process, what we were getting 20 to 30 pages of single lined notes for every episode from ESPN, the NBA, Netflix, and the Jordan brand.
Wow. And oftentimes they were on page 7, it would say more Rodman, and on page 18 it would say less Rodman. That had to be fun.
Oh my God, man. It was mind boggling. My heart rate just went up by about 15 beats just talking about this. So it was ironically a blessing to say, all right, you know what? We're all stuck inside anyway.
Yep.
The world is burning in front of our eyes. So let's just, it was a great thing to have to focus on. It was a terrible time, especially in New York. I mean, it's a terrible time everywhere. But New York was like, you just heard sirens in the distance all the time. It was apocalyptic. So for me to wake up, I mean, literally there was not a moment in that final 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it was where I wasn't thinking about this show. It was all day, every single day, but it was a blessing because we finally, like I said, had a finish line.
Jason Hehir, the director of The Last Dance and Down in the Valley, and many others joining us right now. The writer of this Twitter thread conveniently leaves out, I don't think he did it on purpose, but I'll fill it in, talking about the reasons why this was such a successful documentary. I'll start with brilliant filmmaking, writing, and basically herding cats into one space and doing the impossible. That being said, let's put that aside. That's number 1, 2, 3, and 4. But he also added in some things as well that help with the success. And 3 of them were memes, the Disney Netflix partnership, the best practices being shared, and then the debate. But the memes, to me, it caught my eye. The security guard shrugging his shoulders, Michael holding the iPad and throwing his head back and laughing, and then Michael looking at the iPad with this perplexed look. Like those 3 images and many others were everywhere. It's an opinion thing, Jason, obviously, but do you think social media and the virality, if that's even a word, of all that stuff aided in viewership?
Absolutely. And because everybody was watching it at the same time. So social media was experiencing it at the same time, and people were gathered in their homes watching it at the same time. And people like to post on social media about stuff that they're watching in their homes. So, it was this, I don't like to call it a perfect storm because it was a terrible time in the world.
Yeah.
But the conflagration of events that led to everyone being stuck inside and watching that thing. And I mean, we certainly would have experienced as a culture that show differently if social media did not exist.
Sure.
Because it's the water cooler now, and there was no water cooler because no one was going into work to get a water at the cooler. So, yes, I do think, and we did not anticipate that at all. It never even factored into my mind. I remember one time my producer and one of my best friends, Jake, saying, can you imagine if this thing was popular enough that SNL mentioned it or something like that? That was the ultimate goal, was right. If SNL ever acknowledged this, because that's right. That's the gold standard of pop culture transcendence. But we never thought about which one of these things is going to go viral. I mean, John Michael Wozniak, that security guard you talked about, I didn't give it a second thought that he would be like this a face on a T-shirt.
Well, I can wrap it up this way, and this wraps up that thread too, and this is what really made me think about calling you. He wraps the whole thing up, and he says, here's an all-timer. And there's a lot of screenshots and clips in this thing. I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it. He says, here's an all-timer from The Last Dance, and it's a screenshot. It's a screenshot of President Barack Obama sitting down, and it labels him Barack Obama, former Chicago resident. Dude, when you drive around in a vehicle, do you have to put your stuff in the passenger seat? And by stuff, you know what I mean? Because that took cojones, dude. That was brilliant. Brilliant.
But that was partly done as a message to the note-giving parties that I talked about before. They were insistent that we interview presidents and celebrities. You saw Timberlake in there. You saw Nas in there. I mean, there were some battles that I had to lose to win the war. So if Bill Clinton or Barack Obama comes on and says the Bulls were great in the 90s, like, who cares? Why? What gives them I'd rather have Bob Ryan explaining to me why the Bulls were a great team. But it was a way of explaining, like, hey, this is why he's in this thing. It wasn't, I had people like looking into my social media and saying that I was like a Trumper and all this kind of stuff. Like, that, I mean, no, it had nothing to do with that at all. This was, here's a signal to why he is important to this story and why he has the right to reflect on this story in this context. We did the same thing with Clinton and said former Arkansas governor, because he had seen Scottie Pippen play. Like, that was something that it wasn't even on my list of questions, and it came up conversationally during the interview. And that's the only thing we ended up using from the interview is he said he saw Scottie play in college.
So many things out of this documentary. We could just spend the whole hour on it. The iPad reactions that now every other documentary uses, and so much more. And Jason, you've always been good to us. I know how insanely busy you are, so thanks for carving out a few minutes. And we owe you a longer conversation, my friend. I know, and can't say, but know that you have some pretty insane things in the hopper, and you got to promise us to come on when it's time to let everybody know what's coming up and where to watch it.
Absolutely. Never too busy for my buddies in Sacramento.
Say hi to give the puppy a scratch. Say hello to the new bride, and I hope you are well. Have a good day, my man.
All right, fellas. You too.
Thank you.